Hello and welcome to a brand new video on my channel. Today I'm excited to present to you part 10 of the story, Pandora and the Eternal War. I really hope you enjoy it. If you do, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share my channel with your friends. In today's episode, we dive into the unfolding romance between Pandora and Camilla, as well as the intense final rounds of the Meta Cup. Have a great time with this story, and enjoy the rest of your day. Pandora pulled back from Camilla, stepping aside, her eyes slightly narrowing in confusion. She blinked as the taste of the kiss lingered on her lips, her gaze fixed on Camilla, perplexed. "What does this mean?" she asked, her voice steady but marked with uncertainty. "Why did you do that? Why do you want to hold me, even when the prophecy says I'm a danger?" Camilla's chest rose and fell heavily as she caught her breath. She looked at Pandora, seeing the confusion behind those dark, amethyst-like eyes, and smiled. The prophecy loomed over them like a shadow, but to Camilla, it was nothing more than an exciting challenge. She took a breath before answering, her tone full of affection and madness. "I don't care about the prophecy," she said with a soft, almost dismissive shrug. "It can change. We both know that. The future is always shifting, always moving. What matters is now." Camilla reached for Pandora's hand, her fingers tracing the contours of her palm gently. "Chaos, destruction, it doesn't scare me. It doesn't even have to be bad. You're not doomed to bring it. You might destroy things, sure, but only because you have to. Maybe to defend yourself, or maybe just because things need to change." Pandora listened carefully, her face calm but her mind whirling, trying to understand what Camilla was saying. It made sense, even if it didn't entirely click in her head yet. "I see," she nodded slowly. "That makes sense, I think." Camilla watched Pandora's reaction closely, knowing her kiss meant something much deeper. For Pandora, it was just another moment, a fleeting thing. She realized Pandora didn't view it with the same intensity, and her voice lowered a little as she admitted, "I love you, Pandora." The words hung in the air, light and weighty all at once, like a delicate, fragile thing left floating between them. Pandora looked at her, processing the statement with a simple nod. She accepted it, almost casually, not fully grasping the weight of what Camilla was giving her. "All right," Pandora said after a moment, her voice as calm as ever. "I'll need your help. If we want to get stronger, to win the Meta Cup and see our plans through, we need power and influence." She paused, her eyes scanning the distant horizon. "It would be good if we could meet again in the final. But even if that doesn't happen, I could use your help. I need you to teach me how the world works. I don't understand these societal norms, or technology, computers." Camilla grinned, already pleased with how this conversation was turning. "Of course, Pandora, I can help you with that." She glanced at the sleek holographic bracelet on Pandora's wrist and added, "We've still got some time. About an hour and a half until the next round starts. Other matches are happening around the world right now. By the afternoon, we'll be up again." They found a bench beneath the trees, the air thick with the sweet fragrance of flowers and fresh earth. The park was a quiet haven amidst the towering skyscrapers, the light of two suns, one large and yellow, the other small and blue, streaming down through the green leaves overhead. The peaceful atmosphere seemed to soften the hard edges of their world, if only for a little while. Camilla explained further, gesturing around as she spoke. "The Meta Cup is held in different cities. Each round, each battle, happens simultaneously in different arenas. We're in Alpha Metropolis now, in the Meta Center. Later today, we'll fight in one of the final rounds. The last stages will all take place here." Pandora nodded, absorbing the information like a sponge. Camilla pulled up the holo display on her own bracelet, showing Pandora how to access her contacts. "These bracelets," Camilla explained, "aren't just for accessing the net. You can make calls, share information." She held her bracelet against Pandora's, and a small beep confirmed their contact info was shared. "Yours is a pretty old model, though," Camilla noted with a chuckle. "You should get an upgrade soon." Pandora looked down at the worn, outdated device on her wrist, nodding in agreement. "I will, when I can." For a moment, they both fell silent, the sounds of the park surrounding them, the rustle of leaves, distant voices, and the faint hum of the city beyond. Pandora looked over at Camilla, noticing the scar that stretched across her face, rough and ugly. cutting through her otherwise striking features. She had seen it before, of course, but it never seemed to interest her much until now. As they stood up to leave, Camilla's voice broke the quiet. You know, Pandora, she began slowly, you've never asked me about this. She touched the scar lightly. I've noticed. You don't seem to care about it. Or maybe it interests you? Pandora glanced at her deep purple red eyes reflecting the light of the twin suns. It does, but we can talk about that later. After the Metacup. Camilla nodded, understanding. They walked together, leaving the park behind, the light of the two suns still casting long shadows across the city. Pandora was grateful in her own quiet way. She wasn't alone anymore. Camilla was there for better or worse, obsessed and toxic as she might be. At least she was a constant in Pandora's chaotic world. As Pandora and Camilla slowly walked out of the park, a sense of calm settled between them. The soft rustle of leaves, stirred by a light breeze, and the gentle hum of the city filled the air. Above, the twin suns, one small and blue, the other large and golden, bathed the streets of Metropolis Alpha in a warm, silvery light. The tall, sleek buildings that lined the streets shimmered with futuristic elegance, their white and silver facades reflecting the twin suns in all directions. It felt almost serene, despite the looming battles ahead. Camilla glanced at Pandora, a sly smile on her lips. I've got something I need to handle before we meet at the Metacup, she said, her tone casual but laced with purpose. But remember, if you need help with the computers or understanding how all this tech works, I'm here. She gave Pandora a quick, meaningful nod before stepping closer. We'll talk later. Just focus on your match for now. Pandora returned the nod, her amethyst like eyes gleaming under the sun's light. Thanks, Camilla. I'll see you there. With that, Camilla turned, disappearing into the sea of pedestrians that wandered the streets of Alpha. Her figure blended into the metallic sheen of the city as the sound of her footsteps faded into the noise of the metropolis. Pandora was left standing there, momentarily alone, watching as her only real ally disappeared into the bustling world. The buildings around her reached toward the sky like towering giants, their white and silver surfaces smooth and cold, almost too pristine for the chaos that lived within them. As Pandora began to walk again, her mind drifted back to the attack on the Metacup the previous day. The masked villain, known only as Phantom, had orchestrated the assault. Yet the more Pandora thought about it, the less sense it made. If Phantom's true goal had been to massacre everyone at the tournament, why send someone so reckless, so obviously unstable? He had seemed more interested in causing chaos than actual death. Pandora slowed her pace, her brow furrowing as she pondered the larger picture. Could it have been a message? She walked past a group of people, their excited chatter fading into the background as her thoughts deepened. Perhaps the true goal was never to kill anyone. They didn't need to kill anyone. Pandora realized that causing panic and fear among the tournament participants could have been a calculated move. It exposed the Hero Association's vulnerabilities, demonstrating how easily villains could infiltrate even the most secure locations. The terror alone might dissuade many potential heroes from pursuing their path. And yet, it also sent another message, a bolder one. Pandora's eyes darkened as she considered the possibility. The attack may have been a form of advertising. It wasn't just an act of terror, it was a recruitment drive. Show the world that heroes were weak, and then make the offer. Join the villains. Phantom, or whoever his superiors were, wanted to highlight the cracks in the system. They wanted to attract those disillusioned with the hero's way of life. Her lips curled into a slight smile at the thought. She admired the audacity of it. Maybe it was time to consider something similar. Pandora had always been drawn to power, and now, more than ever, she saw the potential in gathering her own force. The Metacup was a great start for making herself known, but if she truly wanted to reshape this world, or at least carve out her place within it, she would need more than just strength. She would need influence. Creating her own group of villains could be the first step. But Pandora knew she couldn't rush into it. She was still learning, still figuring out how this world worked. There were too many moving parts, too many people and systems she didn't yet understand. But she would, soon enough. Leaning against the cool, smooth surface of a nearby building, Pandora let out a slow breath, her thoughts settling into a plan. Around her, the crowd had thinned, the once bustling street now quieter as the city moved on with its day. The light from the twin suns filtered through the spaces between the buildings, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly across the streets. Glancing down at her wrist, Pandora checked the time on her holographic bracelet. She still had an hour before the next round of the Metacup. Plenty of time to think. Pandora leaned against the cold wall of one of the towering industrial buildings, her thoughts churning. The streets around her had thinned out, the once bustling crowds reduced to a trickle of pedestrians. She glanced at her wrist, noting she still had an hour before the next round of the Metacup. Her mind wandered back to the events of the past day. The attack, the heroes, the villains, and the fire of hatred within her sparked to life once again. Her goal was clear. She needed to become more powerful. Not just for herself, but to crush the Heroes Association beneath her heel, to obliterate the ones responsible for her father's death, and to uncover the truth about her mother's disappearance. The cold, calculated rage inside her flared, icy, and relentless. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about restoring balance in a world that had wronged her. The association had taken everything from her. She would return the favor, piece by piece, but brute force wasn't the way. Pandora knew she had to be strategic, silent, and careful. Each step had to be measured. She didn't care about the ethical implications of what she planned to do. She was beyond such considerations. Ethics didn't matter to her, only results. She needed to grow stronger, and to do that, she needed influence, allies, and knowledge. Her mind flickered over the competitors she'd seen so far. Mio, with her kinetic absorption ability that made her temporarily stronger with every hit. Makito, whose hot ice Arcanus allowed him to wield both ice and fire in an impossible blend. And Reno, with his chilling frozen flames, burning with cold fury. Each of these abilities intrigued her, each a piece of power she could one day exploit. But now was not the time to act. There would be a better opportunity, and she was nothing if not patient. For now, she needed to observe, to gather information. Perhaps she should even compile a list of the most dangerous competitors, noting their arcanis, where they were deployed, and their weaknesses. Yes, a list would be useful. Her thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a sharp voice. Hey! Pandora blinked, snapping out of her reverie. She had been walking without realizing it, heading in the general direction of the Metacup Stadium. She looked up, spotting the faint outline of the Meta Center's towering structure in the distance. Are you even listening to me? The voice was clearer now, a female voice, sharp and angry. Pandora's eyes focused on the figure blocking her path, a muscular girl with a fiery scowl on her face and a ball of flame swirling in her hand. Lilith. Pandora narrowed her eyes, recognizing her instantly. Lilith's fiery aura glowed around her, the flames dancing across her hand and up her arm like living creatures. Her irritation was obvious, and Pandora had a feeling this encounter wasn't going to end peacefully. I said, you won't be making it to the next round, Lilith snarled. You're going to be disqualified because you won't get there on time. Pandora raised an eyebrow. And why would that be? Because I'm not letting you through, Lilith snapped, her tone dripping with arrogance. There's no way I'm letting someone like you win. You're nothing special, just lucky. You don't deserve to be here. Pandora listened quietly, her expression cold and unreadable as Lilith continued her tirade. Inside, however, she felt the familiar darkness rising, the flames of her anger stoked by the insults, the threats, but she didn't let it show. She wouldn't give Lilith the satisfaction of seeing her riled up. No, Pandora remained calm, composed, strategic. Lilith's arrogance was almost laughable. She truly believed she could stop Pandora, that her petty flames were a real threat. Pandora could feel the cold focus settling over her mind, pushing aside any lingering emotions. If she was going to fight, she would do it with precision and without hesitation. She activated a series of her Arcanus abilities simultaneously: ultrasound perception, infrared vision, enhanced hearing. As the powers synced together, her senses expanded beyond the normal human range, scanning the area. There were no other people nearby. This industrial alleyway was deserted, the perfect spot for an altercation. The Metacenter's dome was visible in the distance, the final destination looming. Pandora could make it there easily if she disposed of this obstacle quickly. She let her neck crack, her lips curling into a smirk as she stepped forward, her eyes locking onto Lilith's. "You talk too much," Pandora said coldly, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. Before Lilith could respond, Pandora launched herself forward without warning. Her body moved with terrifying speed, propelled by a burst of kinetic force that sent her hair flying back and her eyes narrowing into a predatory glare. Her pupils contracted, her eyes widening with a manic intensity as she surged toward Lilith. Her grin widened into something unsettling, a twisted smile that only deepened the sense of dread in the air. Her hair whipped wildly behind her, caught in the gust of her own momentum. Pandora's eyes narrowed as Lilith launched a blazing fireball straight at her. The searing heat of the flame cut through the air, and Pandora heard the menacing hiss as it tore through the narrow alley. Without missing a beat, Pandora twisted her body with flawless precision, springing from the wall she had previously leaned against. Her feet barely touched the surface as she spun gracefully in the air, her pirouette both elegant and deadly. She used the force of her rotation to push off the wall, landing with feline agility, legs spread wide for balance. She ducked, barely avoiding another scorching attack. The air above her head sizzled, and Pandora inhaled the scent of burning ash. The fiery heat intensified, but she quickly deactivated her infrared vision. The flames were too blinding when combined with that perception. She didn't need it for this fight. She was far more focused on the rhythm of the battle, on her movements and strategy. Lilith was hurling insults with every failed attack, comparing Pandora to a darting rabbit, mocking her agility and calling her cowardly. Pandora, however, tuned out the insults. They were irrelevant. Her mind was cold, calculating. She focused only on her next move, her plan already unfolding. With a flick of her wrist, she snapped her fingers. In one smooth motion, she pulled a small device from her pocket and hurled it at the ground. Instantly, a dense cloud of smoke exploded outward, filling the entire alleyway with thick, impenetrable fog. Pandora smiled. The smoke didn't hinder her at all. It was merely a simple illusion, designed to rob Lilith of her sight. It clouded everything around them, but had no effect on Pandora's own vision. As the smoke coiled and wrapped around them, she watched Lilith grow frustrated, blindly hurling fireballs in all directions. Pandora had to end this quickly. The growing chaos would soon draw attention. She moved with lightning speed, bouncing off the alley walls, her footsteps as light as air. Another fireball whizzed past her, striking the wall where she had been only moments before, leaving a trail of smoke and embers in its wake. In the blink of an eye, Pandora crouched horizontally against the side of the building, using the momentum of her movements to press herself against the surface. Time seemed to slow as her perception heightened, and she prepared her next move. As she clung to the wall, she laid another illusion over herself, altering her appearance just slightly, ensuring that no one would recognize her once she decided to vanish from the scene. With a powerful leap, she launched herself at Lilith from behind. Lilith didn't see her coming, completely disoriented by the smoke. Pandora's strike landed squarely on Lilith's back, knocking her forward. Lilith stumbled, her body jerking as she yelped in surprise. How? How do you have 3 different abilities?" Lilith gasped, her voice tinged with both frustration and fear. "This isn't fair." Pandora's cold, predatory smile widened as she responded, her voice as sharp as ice. "Only fools show their cards too soon, Lilith. You wear your arrogance like a badge. That's why you'll never win." Lilith's eyes widened in realization, her bravado faltering. She couldn't see anything. Meanwhile, Pandora was in complete control of the fight. Panic started to set in. Lilith debated using her most destructive move, the Raging Nova, but hesitated. The devastation it would cause would be too great. If she unleashed it here, it would destroy half the district and leave too much evidence of her reckless actions. Her family's reputation would be ruined. "We can talk this out." Lilith's voice was suddenly desperate, her fireball shrinking as fear took over. Pandora's smile vanished, replaced by an icy, emotionless gaze. "There's nothing to talk about. You came after me." Lilith's breathing grew shallow. "If you kill me here, people will start asking questions. They'll know it was you." Pandora's expression remained unreadable. "Then let them." Pandora under Eviga Creek, Video 10, Site of Feet. High above the bustling city, the noise of the crowds celebrating the Metacup drifted through the air like waves, their cheers and excited voices reverberating off the steel and glass of the towering buildings. Yet something felt off, wrong. A lone police officer stood on the corner of a quiet street, his eyes narrowing as he noticed the subtle disturbance in the atmosphere. He couldn't pinpoint it at first, but the air itself seemed to shift, as if heat was radiating from a point just out of sight. He squinted, trying to make sense of it, and spotted a dense cloud of fog 2 blocks away, swirling unnaturally. The temperature fluctuations that his arcanist could detect were erratic, flickering as if something violent was happening within the shroud. It wasn't a strong ability, just an E rank, but it was enough to sense oddities in his surroundings. He reached for his radio, intending to call for backup, but the device crackled uselessly in his hand. The signal was overwhelmed, likely by the influx of communication traffic due to the Metacup. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath, frustration bubbling up. But he couldn't just ignore the situation. Taking a deep breath, he steadied himself and decided to investigate. As he moved closer, the heat patterns grew more irregular, then abruptly stopped altogether. His heart pounded as he approached the source of the disturbance. He could now hear faint voices in the distance, though they were too garbled to understand clearly. Suddenly, a blur of motion caught his eye. Something fast, too fast for him to follow with normal sight, darting from one place to another. He stopped in his tracks, unsure of what he'd just seen, the sound of rapid, heavy footfalls echoing through the narrow alleyways. Before he could even process what was happening, the fog, thick and obscuring, vanished entirely. It didn't dissipate slowly, as fog typically would. It was gone in an instant, as if it had never been there to begin with. And then he saw it. His stomach lurched violently, bile rising in his throat. A young woman lay crumpled in the middle of the street, her neck twisted at an unnatural angle, her body marred with visible injuries. He couldn't bring himself to look closer. It was a grisly, unsettling sight, one that would haunt him. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and he fumbled with his radio, panic setting in. "Officer Delgado here, requesting immediate backup." His voice shook as he spoke into the radio. He glanced around, taking in the damage around him. The alley walls were scorched with deep black marks, the telltale signs of powerful fire-based attacks. Smoke still rose from the smoldering remains of a trash bin, and the air smelled thick with ash and charred metal. Pieces of debris littered the ground, and several walls looked as if they'd been pummeled by something far stronger than any human should be capable of. His radio crackled to life after a few tense moments. "This is Central. What's your location, Delgado? Over." "I'm at 3 blocks south of the Metacup venue. There's been some kind of fight. The scene is a mess, and there's a body. I need forensic teams and backup, immediately." There was a pause on the other end, and then, "Understood, Delgado. Do you have any suspects?" "Over." Delgado swallowed, his eyes scanning the alley again. "No suspects in sight. Whoever did this, they're gone. No trace left behind." The response came quickly. "Copy that. Stay put and secure the scene. Backup is en route. Over." As Delgado pocketed his radio, a cold shiver ran down his spine. There was something deeply disturbing about the way the fight had unfolded, the chaos and destruction left behind. But most troubling of all was the complete absence of anyone who might have been responsible. It was as if whoever had done this had disappeared into thin air, leaving only carnage in their wake. His eyes drifted once more to the broken body on the ground, and he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cooling air. He couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had just happened, it was far from over. Delgado crouched beside the cracked wall, examining the deep, jagged fissures etched into the old stone. The damage was unmistakable. Someone had launched themselves from this spot with immense force, leaving the structure scarred. His thoughts raced. Whoever had done this had to possess an arcanist related to physical enhancement. No normal human could have done this. The name that crossed his mind made his blood run cold: Lilith Hustle. But the fact that someone had apparently bested Lilith in a fight? That was even more terrifying. Delgado felt a tremor of doubt, his E-rank arcanist providing him with little more than the ability to detect environmental irregularities. It was nowhere near enough to face whoever had taken down someone as formidable as Lilith. Still, the sense of duty gnawed at him. He knew full well that following the traces left behind could place him directly in harm's way, but he had no choice. Carefully, he studied the faint footprints leading away from the scene, tracking them through the dusty, abandoned industrial streets. The tracks abruptly ended about 10 meters ahead. Tiny fractures in the ground told Delgado that the person had likely launched themselves again, vanishing in a swift leap. He focused his arcanus once more, searching for any other disturbances, but the area around him remained eerily still. His ability wasn't helping him anymore. Then something caught his eye, a faint pulsation in the integrity of a nearby wall, barely visible. It was the kind of disturbance only his arcanus could pick up. Approaching it, he deactivated his power for a moment to see normally. A web of hairline cracks spread from where the pulsating point had been. He pressed his head against the wall, activating his arcanus again. Looking through the fractures, a series of jumps began to form in his mind, mapping out the path of whoever had been here. Chasing them now would be futile. They were too far ahead, too fast. But there was more to investigate. Delgado turned his attention back to the scene, but before he could continue, the police backup arrived, cordoning off the area swiftly. One of the officers shook his head as he looked around. This was a brutal fight, the officer muttered, but at least it's not as messy as that last case 2 months ago. Delgado nodded grimly, his unease deepening as they contacted the Hustle family. Lilith's family, famous for their heat-based arcanus abilities, was a formidable force, with powerful individuals in every generation. As the call was placed, Delgado's stomach tightened. He could only imagine the reaction this would provoke. The head of the Hustle family was furious. When the news of his granddaughter's death reached him, his rage was palpable. His powerful arcanus abilities flared, and he demanded immediate action. He wanted Lilith's death to be made public for a manhunt to be launched. But the Heroes Association refused his demands. They couldn't risk disrupting the Meta Cup, not with so many influential families invested in the event. The Cup held global attention, and halting it for a single murder, even one of such a prominent family, was simply not an option. Despite the fury of the Hustle family, the leaders of the association stood firm. Their communication officers and strategists debated the best course of action, carefully considering the impact of revealing the murder. The Cup had to continue. A global event like this could not be derailed by a single tragedy. Not now. The priority was to keep the event running smoothly, to avoid panic. And while these discussions continued, in the heart of Alpha Metropolis, the Meta Cup raged on. Cheers and shouts echoed through the grand arena as two contestants battled fiercely in front of the roaring crowd. But in one of the many waiting rooms, Pandora sat quietly, watching the fight on a massive white wall that streamed the current match. She wasn't up yet. It was strange, this feeling of being in the calm before the storm, knowing her time would come soon. The waiting room was spacious, starkly white, with smooth surfaces that gave it a sterile, almost cold feel. This couldn't possibly be the only waiting room in the facility, Pandora mused. The Meta Cup was far too massive for that. But her thoughts soon drifted away from the room. The warm, steady pulse of her arcanus occupied her mind. She could feel it inside her, that familiar sensation of power coursing through her veins. And then there was the new one, the arcanus she had taken from Lilith. The orb of energy nestled within her felt hot, but in an oddly soothing way, as if it was melding with her body. Pandora knew that fire would no longer be a danger to her. The intense heat that had once been her enemy could no longer touch her. It was a strange comfort. Still, she couldn't shake the lingering question that gnawed at her. Was it the right decision to kill Lilith? She had taken her arcanus, sure. But had it been necessary? Was it truly the right thing to do? The thought kept circling back in her mind, refusing to leave her in peace. She had gained power, no doubt about that, but the cost? She wasn't certain it had been worth it. Her eyes flicked back to the screen as the fight played on. The two fighters clashed in a spectacular display of arcanus abilities, their movements captured in every detail by the cameras. The crowd roared, oblivious to the dark undercurrent of events that had unfolded outside. Pandora leaned back, her body pressing against the cold, smooth wall as she stared blankly ahead, deep in thought. The stress gnawed at her mind, despite her certainty that she hadn't left any incriminating traces behind. It had been a risky move, but she had taken every precaution, changing her scent, her appearance, becoming completely invisible. She had vanished into the night, sprinting through the city in her vampiric form, leaping across rooftops and covering large distances through the air. She had done everything she could to confuse anyone who might have been tracking her. Still, the lingering worry remained. If someone found her trail, it would be disastrous. Pandora cursed under her breath, scolding herself for losing control in the heat of the moment. She could have handled things differently, but it was too late now. What's done is done, she thought, her emotions swirling beneath her calm exterior. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps and the distant hiss of water from the showers. Camilla, with her striking scar that ran from the upper right corner of her forehead to the lower left of her cheek, entered the room. Everyone noticed her arrival, but no one said a word as she dropped her heavy backpack and gracefully sat beside Pandora. Camilla turned to her, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's been a murder," Camilla murmured, her tone low but steady. "A few minutes ago. The Hero Association and the police are working together, trying to trace the culprit, but it's been difficult." Pandora nodded, her heart quickening slightly, though she kept her face emotionless as always. They suspect someone with a physical enhancement ability. That was all they had so far. Pandora's anxiety eased just a fraction, but she didn't allow any relief to show. She couldn't afford to slip, not even for a moment. Camilla continued to speak softly, detailing how the chaos of the city's streets had made it nearly impossible for anyone to properly follow the trail. They have experts on it, but no one has been able to trace the escape yet. It's too erratic. Pandora, still feigning indifference, felt her heart steady. Good, no one's onto me, yet. A large holographic screen on the opposite wall displayed the current match from the Meta Cup. Mio, one of the most skilled contestants, was locked in battle with an opponent who had the ability to control shadows. Pandora's eyes flicked to the display, watching as the shadow user weaved dark constructs with incredible precision. The opponent would disappear every time Mio's flames came close to hitting him, vanishing into the shadows. Impressive, Pandora thought, momentarily distracted by the fight. The shadow user's agility and speed were remarkable. Every time Mio tried to land a blow, the figure would dissolve into darkness, only to reappear elsewhere. But as the fight progressed, Mio seemed to catch on. He raised his right hand, gathering flames that burned brighter and brighter, condensing into a small, searing ball of light. With a sudden burst, the light expanded, banishing all shadows from the platform and forcing his opponent out into the open. Pandora couldn't help but admire Mio's strategy as the fight resumed with a flurry of intense blows, but her attention quickly returned to Camilla. Camilla was useful, Pandora thought, her mind already formulating plans for what might come next. "If you can, keep me updated on the investigation," Pandora said quietly, her voice almost casual. Camilla looked surprised. "Why?" Camilla asked, her eyebrows raised. Pandora rolled her eyes slightly, still maintaining her composed exterior. "I just find it interesting, that's all." Camilla chuckled softly, her expression playful. "As you wish, my lady," she teased, giving a light mock salute before turning her attention to the screen. Pandora didn't respond, only watching the screen, though her mind was still spinning with 1,000 thoughts. Camilla would be helpful, no doubt, but there was so much at stake now. Camilla continued speaking, her voice steady amidst the soft murmur of voices filling the room. The low hum of conversations was briefly interrupted when another woman emerged from the showers. All eyes in the women's waiting room turned toward her. She had short, dark green hair and striking red eyes, her dark skin gleaming slightly from the lingering moisture. The woman moved confidently, thin and elegant, completely naked. The other women glanced at each other, a mixture of surprise and confusion on their faces, as the stranger quickly pulled clothes from her backpack and dressed without hesitation. Pandora frowned, wondering why the woman was so casual about her nudity. "Doesn't she care at all?" Camilla caught Pandora's glance and smirked, answering the unspoken question. She's from a very special branch, Camilla whispered. A clan that lives in the wild. They're called the Asile clan. Pandora raised an eyebrow. The wild? You mean the unknown territories? Her voice held a note of surprise. Camilla nodded, her expression thoughtful. Yes, it's the first time anyone from the Asile clan has participated in anything outside their home. They've shown their strength simply by surviving in the unknown territories for so long. What's interesting is that they live with minimal technology. They know what it is, but because their land is tropical, they don't need many clothes. That's why she's so open with herself. It's completely normal for her. Pandora's frown deepened for a moment before she let it go, turning her focus back to Camilla. She had more important things to think about. There's something else I wanted to ask you, Pandora said. Why do some heroes name their Arcanist abilities? Camilla whistled softly, as if the question brought back old memories. It's a significant tradition, she explained. Naming your Arcanist ability helps establish a connection with it. It creates something like an inner world, a realm that reflects the nature of your ability. Some call it the Arcanist world, or the inner sphere. Pandora leaned forward slightly, intrigued. Camilla continued, by giving your Arcanist the right name, you form a deeper bond with it. This inner world, or Arcanist world, is like a dreamscape where you can train, think, and understand your power better. It's a metaphysical space within you, so unfortunately, you can't bring anything into it, but it's useful for honing your skills without outside distractions. Pandora considered this for a moment, her mind already drifting to her own Arcanist. What would she name it? Something that reflected her power, her ability to absorb and assimilate the strengths of others. Assimilation, that was the key. Suddenly, the name came to her. Asmosia. Asmosia. The word resonated deeply within her. It felt right, a perfect fit for her chaotic abilities. In that instant, Pandora sensed a shift inside her, a profound connection forming between her and her Arcanist. Asmosia, the Lord of Assimilation, was born, or rather, it had finally been named. Lord of Assimilation, Pandora thought, the name echoing through her consciousness. She could feel the power stirring within her, responding to the name, growing more alive, more tangible. It wasn't just chaos anymore. It was something more refined, more purposeful. As this bond solidified, Pandora's inner world began to take shape. She found herself transported to a realm she had only glimpsed in dreams before. But now, it was real, vivid, in every detail. This was her Arcanist world. The world stretched out endlessly, the ground beneath her feet a smooth, obsidian-black liquid that rippled slightly as she stood on it. Above her, the sky was filled with countless stars, white pinpricks against the infinite darkness. And at the center of this space, floating serenely, was a small violet sun. Despite its size, the sun radiated an overwhelming presence, its tendrils of purple flames extending outward, reaching towards the numerous orbs of energy, spheres representing the powers she had stolen that circled around it. This was the core of her power, her Chaos Arcanist, a violet-black sun pulsing with dark energy. It glowed faintly, yet somehow emitted darkness as much as light, casting an eerie, oppressive aura over the entire realm. It felt like an anomaly, a singularity, something beyond comprehension. Pandora stared at it, mesmerized. A singularity. That was exactly how it felt. The violet sun seemed to have limitless potential, an insatiable hunger for chaos and power. But it was not a burden to her. It was something she could rely on, something that was a part of her, as much as she was a part of it. This is who I am now, Pandora realized. The Arcanist, this chaos sun, was not just a tool or a power. It was an extension of her will, her essence. She could feel the energy coursing through her, could sense the stolen powers orbiting the sun like planets around a star. There was no limit to how much it could consume, how much it could grow. But it didn't control her. Instead, it felt like a companion, a partner. The Chaos Arcanist was fully one with her now. And in that moment, Pandora knew she had taken another step toward mastering her fate. Pandora was jolted back into reality when Camilla gently nudged her. It felt like waking up from a deep dream, the vibrant world of her inner Arcanist fading like mist. Camilla's voice broke through the haze. Hey, Pandora, what's going on with your back? Your jacket has these two weird bumps. Pandora blinked, still disoriented from her experience in the Arcanist world. "What do you mean?" she asked, her hand instinctively reaching behind her. When her fingers brushed against something solid, her eyes widened in disbelief. She could feel bones pushing against her skin, small but unmistakable. Wait, can this really be happening? Pandora's thoughts raced. She gingerly touched the bony protrusions again, her mind struggling to comprehend what was going on. Just a moment ago, she had been marveling at her deeper understanding of Asmosia, her Chaos Arcanus. And now, another wave of shocking information hit her all at once. The bones. She knew what they were. Vampires like Pandora, those from pure bloodlines, usually started to develop their first wing bones between the ages of 20 and 25. Early bloomers sometimes grew them as young as 18 or 19, but that was rare. But she was only 16. How can this be? Pandora wondered, feeling her heart race. This was far too early. Was it the chaotic energy surging through her veins? Was it somehow accelerating her growth, altering the natural process? Or maybe it had something to do with her unique nature, being able to switch between her human and vampire forms, thanks to Asmosia, which was in itself part of the chaos flowing within her. A mysterious force, powerful and unpredictable. But then again, maybe it wasn't just one thing. Perhaps the abilities she had, this chaotic power, this blend of human and vampire traits, all contributed to it. She couldn't be certain. Nothing about this made sense. And yet, there it was, wing bones. A sudden realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. If I were a normal human, she thought, there's no way I should be able to handle so many abilities at once, even if I was born with them. Her body had never needed time to adjust to the increased energy levels she was carrying. There should have been some kind of adaptation period, a time where her body struggled to keep up with the extra paranormal power coursing through her. But she had felt nothing of the sort. The heightened supernatural energy from all the different abilities she'd absorbed should have put a tremendous strain on her. But it didn't. It was baffling. And then it hit her. Asmosia. Her Arcanus must somehow be negating that adjustment time. It was like her ability to assimilate other powers was smoothing out the transitions, removing the burden from her body altogether. Pandora's mind buzzed with the implications of this. It was fascinating. The more she thought about it, the more a sense of optimism and excitement filled her. She smiled, a rare, warm smile, as the thrill of understanding flowed through her. She was incredibly powerful, and more than that, she was beginning to grasp the true potential of her abilities. Asmosia, her Chaos Arcanus, was not just a tool for survival. It was something far greater, something that could make her unstoppable. And as this realization sank in, the excitement spread through her bones, filling her with an almost uncontrollable enthusiasm for the future. Pandora's thoughts lingered on the stunning revelations. She remembered reading somewhere that superheroes, especially those with more than one Arcanus, often required several years longer to truly understand and control their abilities compared to someone with just one. Heroes, those who called themselves superhumans, those with supernatural powers, the Arcanists, had bodies that needed time to adjust to the use of this immense energy. Paranormal power, although not something technology could produce, could still be measured. But even this was somehow bypassed by her. Pandora was beginning to understand that her ability, Asmosia, seemed to act like a cloak, covering the fact that she had multiple Arcanists. It was as if her chaos energy veiled everything about her true potential, hiding how overwhelming her abilities really were. As her mind pieced it all together, Pandora silently listed the traits she'd come to understand about herself. First, her Chaos Arcanus, Asmosia, allowed her to steal other people's Arcanists. She could also reverse this process, using Asmosia to grant abilities to others, should she wish to. Second, Asmosia gave her the unique ability to shift between her human and vampire forms, a true hybrid. She could fully exist as either or both, and this was something entirely under her control. Third, and perhaps the most intriguing, Asmosia could conceal her possession of multiple Arcanists. Only the abilities she actively used were visible to others, the rest hidden beneath layers of chaos energy. Fourth, during her transformations, Asmosia negated the adjustment time her body should have needed to handle increased paranormal power. Normally, when absorbing new abilities or tapping into heightened energy, a superhuman's body would experience strain, requiring time to adapt. But Pandora bypassed this entirely, her growth accelerating in ways she couldn't fully explain. She couldn't be sure if this was due to her biological nature, the chaos energy itself, or some combination of both. One thing troubled her. She didn't know if this rapid growth and immense power would shorten her lifespan. She felt vital, strong, and healthy, with no signs of illness or fatigue. But what did that really mean in the long run? So far, her body aged at the same rate as a human's, but that was hardly any comfort, considering how unique she was. The more Pandora thought about it, improbable it seemed that anyone else could experience the same combination of circumstances that had made her what she was. The sequence of events that had led to her becoming this powerful was so complex, almost impossible to replicate. Her father, Elias, had possessed the rare ability to copy other people's arcanists. And then there was her mother, a vampire who had shared such a powerful love with Elias that it had produced chaos energy, blending magic and paranormal power in a way that had never been seen before. Pandora reflected on how unlikely it was for a human and a vampire to fall in love, given the centuries of conflict between their species. Humans and vampires had been at war for millennia, each side viewing the other as irredeemably evil. That her parents had found each other had defied this hatred to such an extent that their union birthed chaos itself. It was beyond rare. It was almost laughably improbable. The more she thought about it, the more Pandora realized that the chances of such a thing ever happening again were near zero. The idea that someone else might be born with the same conditions, who could control chaos energy as she did, seemed impossibly far-fetched. For that to happen, there would have to be another perfect storm of events, another human and vampire falling in love, another surge of magic and paranormal power colliding. Even if that happened, there was no guarantee the outcome would be the same. Pandora's lips twitched at the thought. The idea of two people stealing each other's abilities, fighting to outdo one another with chaos energy, was amusing to her. Still, she knew it wasn't just about chaos. Someone could, in theory, be born with a chaos arcanist that worked differently than hers. As long as there were two people, one with magic, the other with paranormal power, who loved each other deeply enough, chaos could arise again. In theory, anyway. But Pandora doubted this would ever happen again, at least not between humans and vampires. The world was vast, yes, but the centuries of hatred between the two races were deep and difficult to overcome. In her mind, the chances were so slim that they might as well be impossible. Her existence, she concluded, was truly unique. Pandora was abruptly pulled out of her thoughts by a sudden announcement. The next duel is between Reno Hustle and the third representative of the Asile clan. Her interest piqued. Pandora turned her gaze toward the display. Reno's profile stood out on the holographic screen, showing his arcanist, Frostfire Flames. Next to his name, an image of Reno appeared, a young man with silvery gray hair and piercing light blue eyes. The surname Hustle stirred something in Pandora's memory. She recognized it, though at first she wasn't sure why. Then it hit her. Lilith Hustle, a name she knew all too well. Lilith had been a member of this same Hustle family. Pandora felt no guilt, no remorse about it. It was just a realization that flickered through her mind. What truly caught her attention, however, was the fact that there was no listed arcanist next to the name of the woman from the Asile clan. That struck her as strange. Usually, even the most secretive arcanist abilities could be measured or detected in some way. Yet this one was either being deliberately concealed or had somehow escaped notice. That mystery made the upcoming duel all the more intriguing. Pandora's eyes drifted to another part of the display, where she saw her own name, paired with her next opponent. She would be facing Makito Hustle, Reno's twin brother, in the following duel. Pandora couldn't help but find it mildly ironic that she would be up against two members of the same family, one after the other. The odds of that happening felt ridiculously slim. As Pandora considered the upcoming fights, another thought crept into her mind. She was the one who had killed Lilith Hustle. The surname, Hustle, was spelled the same way for all of them. This fact seemed important, though it didn't stir any guilt in her. If anything, it added a layer of intrigue. This was shaping up to be quite the event. This should be interesting, Pandora thought, her mind untroubled by the murder she had committed. Turning her attention back to the holographic display of the current duel, Pandora watched as the two combatants faced off on a stone platform. Reno stood opposite the unnamed woman from the Asile clan. The woman had short, dark green hair and wore a similar white uniform with golden accents, though both were armored with a sleek, black plate. The plate armor was particularly striking. It looked almost alive, shifting in geometric patterns, its metallic surface constantly transforming. A countdown began to tick down above their heads. Reno stretched his fingers, flexing them briefly before manifesting his turquoise flames. The fire wasn't just turquoise, though. Its core was an almost blinding white with tendrils of pale blue. But what struck Pandora most was the outer edge of the flame, where the fire darkened to a deep, eerie turquoise. It was as though the flame had two separate layers, the bright, flickering core and the dark, smoldering edges, both existing in tandem but never truly mixing. Pandora mused at the strangeness of it, but quickly dismissed it as just another quirk in a world where paranormal powers often defied all logic. The young man's arcanus fascinated her. There was something tempting about it, something that made Pandora consider the possibility of stealing it for herself. She allowed a faint smile to play on her lips as she imagined it. The countdown hit 0. Reno immediately launched a turquoise white-blue fireball across the platform. As it moved, Pandora noticed the colors within the flames swirling together, blurring and mixing in a way that almost mimicked the movements of a normal fire. Except normal fire wasn't turquoise, blue, and white. Normal fire burned orange, red, and yellow. Pandora's eyes followed the fireball as it raced toward the Asile woman, but just before it could make contact, the woman dodged with surprising agility. Pandora's eyes were still fixed on the fight when she noticed something odd about the Asile clan woman. The woman's movements were precise, almost mechanical, and as she slid to a halt, dust swirling around her feet, her expression remained disturbingly blank. She crouched down, muscles tensing as if preparing for something more significant. In a blink, she launched herself forward with inhuman strength, closing the distance between her and Reno in mere moments. Reno reacted quickly, freezing the ground beneath his feet. The blue flames dancing around his legs propelled him to the side in a smooth slide, narrowly avoiding her strike. She swung at him, but hit only air. In return, he punched toward her shoulder, his fist wrapped in freezing fire. As his blow connected, the flames flared up around her shoulder. The Asile woman, seemingly unfazed, leaped back with another powerful jump, putting distance between them. Pandora whistled under her breath, impressed. The woman should have been at a disadvantage. Her shoulder had clearly frozen where Reno's flames had touched her. Yet she continued to fight as if nothing had happened. Stronger than an ordinary human, Pandora thought. But something else was off. The blank look on the woman's face, the unnatural movements, the way she fought despite the frostbite creeping across her skin. There was no sign of pain, no reaction at all. Camilla, sitting next to Pandora, leaned over. "Doesn't she seem off?" she whispered. Pandora nodded, her mind racing. No ordinary human could fight like that without showing some kind of pain. Her thoughts narrowed in on the woman's expression, her rigid composure. It wasn't just that she was strong. There was something fundamentally wrong with her. Pandora couldn't shake the feeling that this woman wasn't alive, or at least not in the way most people were. Meanwhile, the fight grew more intense. Reno, his face twisted in concentration, sent more fireballs toward the Asile woman, each faster and more precise than the last. His blindingly blue flames streaked toward her, and yet she dodged each one with uncanny agility. Pandora's eyes narrowed. No one should be able to move that fast. Reno, realizing that his current strategy wouldn't work, changed tactics. He focused, sending a wave of icy flames toward the ground. The wave spread out in a wide arc, forming a circle around the Asile woman. She leaped to avoid it, but the flames curled upward, trapping her within a burning prison. The crowd leaned forward, expecting the fight to be over. The flames crackled, surrounding the woman, and Reno stood at the ready, his hands raised in case she broke free. But instead of a disqualification, there was only silence. For a moment, Pandora thought the fight had ended. And then she saw it. Something impossibly fast, a blur, breaking through the flames. Pandora gasped, barely able to follow the woman's movement as she dashed through the fire, her body covered in burns and frostbite. In a single swift motion, the Assel woman kicked Reno with enough force to send him flying out of the ring. He hit the ground outside with a heavy thud, his eyes wide in disbelief. The crowd erupted in shock as the disqualification announcement echoed through the arena. Camilla blinked, confused. What just happened? I couldn't even see it. Pandora didn't respond immediately, her mind racing. She had seen it. Every precise movement, every impossible dodge. The flames should have been enough to stop anyone, even someone with enhanced abilities. But this woman had pushed through with no sign of pain, no hesitation. Something about her was profoundly wrong. Before Pandora could explain, the screen above the arena replayed the moment in slow motion. The audience watched in awe as the woman dashed through the flames, her body barely reacting to the heat and cold. Then, in the next instant, she had Reno out of the ring with a single decisive kick. Reno stood up, still dazed, shouting, "That's not possible!" The Assel woman, her expression as blank as ever, turned and left the ring, walking calmly back to the waiting area. Pandora's eyes followed her as she moved. She didn't even flinch, Pandora thought. Not a single reaction. When the woman entered the changing room, Pandora stood and followed, her curiosity burning. She caught up to the Ashel clan fighter just as she reached the door. "Hey," Pandora called out, her voice steady but edged with suspicion. "How did you win that fight? No one should be able to survive those flames." The Assel woman turned, her expression still eerily neutral. "I suppose I just had luck on my side," she said softly. "Maybe my opponent was distracted." Pandora's blood ran cold. She knew a lie when she heard one. Her F-rank Arcanus allowed her to detect them. But this time, nothing. No tingling sensation, no alarm. It was as if the woman's words weren't being processed by the ability at all. It's like, it doesn't recognize her as a person, Pandora realized. Something was terribly wrong. The Assile woman wasn't lying, but she wasn't telling the truth either. In fact, it felt as if she weren't really speaking to Pandora in the way a human would. Pandora's mind raced. What is she? Pandora's breath caught in her throat as her eyes focused on the woman from the Assel clan. Something was deeply wrong. She took a sharp step back, muttering quickly, "I slipped," but in truth, Pandora was startled. Startled by the fact that the woman had no heartbeat. Her mind raced. She couldn't hear it, the steady thrum of life that should have been there. But how could that be? The woman's body was warm, and her blood seemed to circulate, given her body temperature. Then came the second realization, even more alarming. The Ass woman possessed 5 different Arcanus powers. Pandora knew immediately that was impossible. Even wielding 3 or 4 Arcanus abilities was extremely rare and took a lifetime, 30 years or more to master. The strain of controlling so many abilities would cripple most people. No one could harness 5 Arcanus without breaking under the immense pressure, much less someone who appeared as young as this woman. Pandora sat down heavily next to Camilla, her hand brushing through her short black hair as she tried to make sense of what she had just discovered. Camilla noticed Pandora's tension and asked, her voice laced with concern, "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Pandora hesitated for a moment before leaning in close and whispering, "She's dead." Camilla blinked, her eyes widening for a moment before she quickly contained her shock. She glanced at the Asa woman, then back at Pandora. "What do you mean, dead? That doesn't make sense." Pandora's voice was low, but urgent. I listened. "She doesn't have a heartbeat. I'm certain of it." Camilla's brow furrowed, her eyes narrowing in thought. "No heartbeat? But the arena sensors would have picked that up." Pandora was about to respond when Camilla paused, her expression shifting as a realization hit her. Wait a second. The Asile clan, they insisted on their fighters not being subjected to any advanced tech scans. Remember? They made it part of their agreement with the tournament. Pandora's eyes widened slightly as she processed Camilla's words. That's right. They didn't want any of their fighters going through full scans. Camilla nodded, her face growing more serious. It makes sense now. If they're hiding something, like the fact that their fighters aren't alive, that's why they didn't want them scanned. If they have someone with an Arcanus power capable of manipulating the dead, like necromancy. Pandora's breath caught in her throat as the pieces fell into place. Necromancy, or something similar. That would explain why the sensors didn't pick up on anything. They're not alive. These aren't living fighters, they're puppets. Both girls fell silent for a moment, the weight of the realization settling in. The Asile clan wasn't just mysterious, they were dangerous in a way no one had anticipated. Pandora and Camilla shared a look, both knowing that this revelation changed everything. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. Also, be sure to share the channel with your friends. Spread the word. If you click on the video link on the left, it'll take you to my latest upload. And if you click on the link to the right, you'll find my full playlist so you can catch up on any videos you might have missed. Right in the center, at the top of your screen, you'll see a link to my YouTube channel. Feel free to check that out too. I hope to see you all in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye.